guest behind the scenes. Nick, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready. Thank you. I am loving the plants. Is that what my little plant over here is going to grow up to be like?
I don't know. We bought them this size, so I don't think they grow. Nope, not going to grow that size.
Okay. I was like, because it would be really cool if it would.
Well, the secret is, you see, you don't wait for them to grow. You buy them full grown and fake, so you don't have to tend to them. They're just always the same, hyper consistent. Isn't that what we're all after in life?
Maybe I just want to have a conversation with my plant so it'll grow a little bit more. It's all good. Nick, I like to start off every conversation just by shaking things up a little bit. So I have a research question.
All right.
That gets me past your little elevator pitches or pre-programmed stories that you may have said over and over for other interviews or other bios. So here is my question. If you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Keeps on going.
Oh, you're going to give me a sentence. Okay.
Yes.
Keeps on going. Every once in a while, I do get tricked into an entire sentence, but it's all
well, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to break the norms, and I wouldn't be authentic to my message if I wasn't absolutely goofy, outside the box, and hopefully the funnest interview you're going to have today.
I don't know. Who knows? Well, we don't know where this is going to go. So I think you already started on my follow-up question, which is, how do those 3 words, keeps on going, how do they play a key role in the core message that you have for people?
Yeah, I think that it's such an important and impactful part of life to understand that you can't give up, because I think sometimes we get this concept that, like, if I just quit, that it'll be over, but life doesn't work like that. It will just keep coming. And so you have to, my big thing is perseverance, and that's continuing on in spite of. That's what the purest definition from my point of view of perseverance is. And so you have to really develop that to learn more about yourself, that we really do have this strength to get through these things. And more often than not, it's a limitation we want to try to put on ourselves as opposed to having to deal with things. So going along with my message, keeps on going, means I just wake up every day with perseverance, understanding that things are probably going to go awry at some point, but you just have to kind of dig in the trenches and continue on in spite of what's going on around you.
So where did this message come from? I'm assuming there's a story behind it that's personal to you.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in a second. But okay. Laura, Gayle, I have a question for both of you today.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Is Nick Volinchak looking good today or what?
I'm wondering what it says all over your shirt. Yes.
Well, let me tell you, I've been wondering for several years since I got it. I don't know if it actually has a message or not. And there's actually, while it is a I like to use in my speech, that
is that his internet or mine? Okay.
Am I back?
Yeah, you were cutting in and out for a moment.
Yeah, so because because life is how it is, as I was setting my whole rig up after testing it last night, at 10:36, the internet promptly decided that we're done here. We're checking out for the day. We're not going to work. So I had to fire off a nervous email to you saying, hey, I don't know what's going to go on here. So I'm hoping that we stay live. I have good internet. I don't buy cheap stuff. But yeah, that's just one of those things where, like, I could have gotten 10 years ago, I would have absolutely probably broken something, but at the very least would have gone on a profanity-laced tirade that would make the father in A Christmas Story look like an amateur. But, I just kind of realized that, hey, things happen. You get tested and you could deal with it a positive way, or you can deal with it a negative way. And there's already so many negative influences in life as it is, that I'm just choosing more and more often to try to deal with things from a positive perspective.
Well, that seems in line with your message.
It is. And to answer your question, which I disrupted, then forgot the question you asked me, it really ties in with my message, because of my background. I think that, I went through a lot of tumultuous periods in life, lost my mother very young, very unexpectedly as well. It wasn't like she dealt with an illness for 5 years. It was like we found out she had cancer mid-September of 1992, and by the end of October, on the 25th, she passed. I mean, it was a very, very aggressive form of cancer. She had a hysterectomy in May of that year, and when they do that stuff, they test you to make sure you're healthy enough to go into it, and they didn't find anything that they found suspicious. So it was like a very traumatic situation. My father, I don't love talking about it, but I'm going to. My father was abusive. It was, as at the time, I thought it was because I was doing something wrong, or, I hate to say things like this, but it was like a lot more acceptable back then, even though it shouldn't have been. Yeah. I've come to learn that he just couldn't understand his own grief and how to deal with it, and that was his outlet. Yeah. But anyway, it ended up becoming a drug addict, homeless by the time I was 21. And I come from an upper middle class area. I'm not a person who didn't have opportunity. I'm not a person who didn't have every chance in the world. I'm a person who made choices, bad choices, again and again and again and again. And I ended up at the Rescue Mission in Mahoney Valley, which is a homeless shelter in Youngstown, Ohio. And I was able to, undergo a transformation there. And I ended up working there for 10 years, roughly, after. And that really exposed me to, and I did work mostly with men for obvious reasons, and which is why I continue to work with just men. My message, my speeches, I think are impactful for anybody who listens to them. But I think due to the emotional vulnerability required in kind of like the one-on-one coaching I want to do, you don't want, a lot of women who go through these situations and need people to talk to aren't getting that emotional support from anywhere else. And I think oftentimes where men are more carnal, women are more emotionally based. And if a man is the only man that's giving her emotional support, they can misconstrue signals and things like that. So just to kind of like be transparent and clear, that's why I really work with men. So yeah, that is a lot of where my message comes from. It comes from my personal experiences, and then my secondhand experiences working with people who were down and out for a variety of reasons.
That's quite the story.
Oh, we're just getting started.
I know that every single person here has their own version of like countless little stories or a bigger story. Like we've all got something, but to know some of a person's story means that we get to know more of the human being, which is the whole point of these interviews. It's like, yes, your message is important. Yes, your business is important, but also who is Nick? Because if we understand you a little bit better, then whatever expression or next lesson you're going to have in business or next skill you're going to try to sell, now we understand where you're coming from versus you just being this skill for hire. I was like, no, we want to be treated as a human being, which is what you were just telling us.
Yeah, and I think coming from a marketing background, I'm exposed to the dirty side of that. As I've kind of grown up, and believe me, I'm not really an adult. I'm just that by pure definition. But, my wife and I were able to kind of start our own marketing agency, and we've got to work with a lot of interesting people, a lot of interesting stories, and really help people achieve what their life's ambitions were. But especially in coaching, one of my rage against the machine moments is that there are so many people who want to commoditize like traumas and situations where people need to come to them for help and support. And you see it all the time where you talk through with these coaches and they're like, okay, well, I want to have a low end offer that's an $80 to get people in the door. Then I want to have like a little more of an intricate offer for people who are willing to spend $299. And then I want to have, a mastermind that spends $900 a month. And then people who want one-on-one get $2,500. And it just starts to feel like, so are you doing this because you are being authentic to your message, or are you doing this because you're trying to enrich yourself? And so from my perspective, I've always hated that. And as I've gone into this, I've kind of told myself that I'm going to work the reverse process where I only offer one-on-one coaching, because to do that, it needs to be meaningful. You need to be super connected with the people you're working with. It takes a lot of time and effort to really work through what they're going through, what they need in the moment, and understanding that it can't just be a copy paste from the last person you talked to. Those experiences need to be very unique to their life and where they're at. So that's kind of the perspective I'm taking on things, and what I want my differentiator to be is I'm not here for the money. I want to be able to share my story. I have a vehicle that I'm lucky enough, in comparison to, I think, some of the other people, that is able to put food on my family's table, that is able to keep a roof over my house. So now this is about, for me, a situation to be able to really help to give back to people who really need to hear the message.
I love that so much, because it is questioning not just what you should do. You should speak. You should create a course. You should do an ebook. All the shoulds. They're everywhere. But knowing how you work as a human being and what your specific audience actually needs from you, in the way that both of those things come together, is so very important. I've been doing the same thing in my business, and I'm like, while I like the one-on-one coaching, I also need to be very mindful of my own energy in that, because it can be very draining very quickly. And I have to do so much work behind the scenes to make sure that I am in that space to not only hold my own crap, but to hold, the heaviness of someone else as well. And so I've been like, okay, how do I create offers that serve in the way that I want to serve and can be sustainable at the same time? And that's really what you're talking about, is working in a way that's sustainable for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it ultimately comes down to being, I use the word so much, authentic. And people, especially, psychologically right now, people buy people. And so I know personally, when I see something, I'm kind of a soul diver, where I try to look at, like, do I really feel they're being authentic? Or as I'm going through the thing they're trying to sell me, is it always just, every step of the way is just the extended hand? And it's like, I fully understand that people need to make money and all of that stuff, but you lose some of the message when that just seems to be the main focus of what it is you're doing. And especially, I know it's for everybody, right? I was lucky enough to speak at MIT this past weekend, which was awesome. Shameless plug there. And I was able to listen to, coming where I'm coming from, knowing I'm dealing with just men, I was able to hear kind of like the opposite side of the version. Someone named Arena spoke, and she has a bunch of different things she's doing, but she's really working to empower women, especially over the age of 40, who have done so much giving in their life and need to start receiving. And so I know that it's evident on the men's side, just from dealing with, 10 years of my own hellish experience, 10 years of other people's hellish experiences. But it's also important to understand that it's visible on the other side as well, that we're a broken society. As much as we keep making these advancements in medicine, technology, all of these things, somehow life on a day-to-day basis continues to get more and more difficult. It isn't what it was 30 years ago. I actually read somewhere that people who were buying homes in the last housing crisis were like 39 years old. People who are buying homes right now are the same people. So, like, think about it. That wealth hasn't moved to the next generation. It's stayed static where it's at. It's hard it's hard to live right now because there's so many external forces that cause mental health issues. Who knows what's going into the food that we're consuming, and the cheaper you buy it, the more you've got to be concerned about what you're putting in your body. So I think that we're a culture that's broken, and we really need to start working together to move the healing process a lot faster along.
Yep. I think that ties in with my definition of business, at least the people who are gravitated toward BLU Talks. Because for me, it's human beings helping other human beings to be the human beings they want to become. So if we take out the human part, what really is business, which is kind of where all of these automations are going, it feels, whether we intend to or not, to remove some of that level of humanity. And we try to personalize it with all the data, but again, it's data. Data without emotion is meaningless. It has no meaning. So if you understand the emotions and the human aspect, now we can give more meaning to each piece of the data. So we can hopefully personalize better. But without that human touch, it makes it increasingly and exponentially more difficult.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. But you know what? I'm ready. Do you have some questions for me? I feel like I could go on these tangents and just like talk and talk and talk, but I know you have stuff planned, and
Yeah.
Okay, great.
What's the first two questions and then the last one, and then everything else is let's see where the
that's
conversation goes.
perfect, because this is like a perfect fit for me then.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that one thing I'll kind of reflect back to is how I asked you a question when I first started.
And then it cut off, so I don't remember.
Oh no, does Nick Volinchak looking good today or what?
Oh,
I start that off. That's always like the thing I start off with. That message comes from a friend of mine. I'm sure there's going to be questions that come off of this without a doubt. But after I got clean-ish, I will always stipulate that I still drink on occasion. I have always been a firm believer that everybody has to find their own path, right? There's no just like, this is how everybody has to do it. And so I try not to be a hypocrite in saying things like I'm clean or whatever, because I know that that definition to some people means total abstinence, and that's just not where I'm at. But anyway, once I managed to get through the homeless situation, my perspective on life changed, because it was really I should probably be dead now. And there were many, many, many times by my own decisions or situations that I was put in that I should have been. But I loved professional wrestling. And you can't tell because I'm sitting down. But if I was standing up, I'm 6'5", I'm 250 some pounds. I've got some heft to me. I could have been a professional wrestler. But it just never lined up correctly for me. So I thought the next best thing to that would be running my own professional wrestling organization. And so starting in 2007, I ran a company called Championship Wrestling Experience. And we mainly toured around the Youngstown, Ohio area. I can't use tour seriously. We went to various locations in a 20-mile radius and ran roughly from 2007 to 2011. Super cool experience. So many of the people that worked on our shows are now in the WWE. They're in TNA. They're in AEW. So some of these guys have gone on to be pretty good size stars and household names. There was, and actually, I have a very good story. I don't know if it'll be here that I tell it or on another platform within BLU Talks, but I have a very good Jake the Snake Roberts story. And I know Jake is going to be, I don't know if that's come out yet, but he's going to be involved in some capacity. And I know I'm going to be involved in some capacity with what he's doing with BLU Talks. So maybe we can save that for a few weeks, months down the year when it makes more sense. But I was always an amazing talent evaluator. I could see the qualities that made someone like a superstar. I felt like I always had it. And there was one guy in particular, man, when he got on the mic, he just had this look. He postured his body a certain way. He got a certain smirk on his face, and he looked into the crowd and would say, "Is sweet and sour Larry Sweeney looking good today or what?" And the crowd, if he was coming out as a heel, which is the bad guy, the crowd would boo incessantly. If he was working as a baby face, the crowd would cheer. But regardless, he had this ability to just turn the fans to mush and be able to just mold them however he wanted to. And that really, in entertainment, is that superstar quality.
Yeah.
And he and I clicked, and I became close-ish at various points in time with people who were working for us. He and I had this, it was like kindred spirits type thing where I think we both understood the darkness that was brewing inside of us. And I always tried to stay in touch with him. He wrestled and he was starting to get, work his way up into bigger companies. And I was super, super excited for him. I made him our first champion. He was the guy I wanted to put everything behind. And monetarily, it just ended up not working out to where we would continue to use him. He kind of stepped away from wrestling in like 2009-ish, but I would message him on Facebook. We would talk. I worked midnight shifts a lot at the Mission. So, I would call him and we'd have conversations. Sometimes it would go months in between hearing anything from him, but he would always pop back in and be like, "Hey, Nick, haven't been ignoring you. Just needed some time to myself." I always just tried to stay on top of him because I felt like there was just so much potential there. And he I guess maybe even vicariously, even though I was much bigger than him, he was not a huge guy. I felt like I was vicariously living through him because he reminded me so much of myself. And at the end of 2010, he seemed to have everything figured out. He was making a comeback in wrestling. And then one day in 2011, I got a call and it was, he ended his life. And it was, I tend to over romanticize things to some extent where I love everybody and everybody's my best friend and things like that. But I've always been realistic with like, he was not my best friend, but he was someone I always just tried to keep in touch with. And I would try to, especially as my years of overcoming my challenges were becoming, higher and higher in number, I always tried to just tell him like, "I'm there for you. I want to be able to help in any way I can." And he was always, "I appreciate it, but everything's fine," as many people do. And so to some extent, I felt like I let him down. I feel like some people, a multitude of people were there to pull me back off of my own personal ledge. And I just wasn't able to do it for him. But I really, have kind of undertook this mentality that even though he wasn't able to write his next chapter because of an impact he had on my life, I'm able to continue mine. And maybe through my work, his portion of the story is able to reach somebody who really needs it in the moment. And he can vicariously through me, like I lived vicariously through him, start helping people in a way he needed it. So that's kind of one of the ethos behind my microshift movement, and the idea that so often we in life look at like, my mom died and that's a huge, yes, my mom dying was a huge thing, but it didn't necessarily end up having the overall life impact that a small, minute conversation had, because it made me do something. And for me, Larry Sweeney was one of them. And when I talk very specifically about 5 situations. And basically at the time, all 5 of these people were strangers. 2 of these people, I have no idea what their name is or where they're at or if they're still living today. 2, unfortunately, 3 actually, unfortunately, are deceased. But, it's about those. It's really about understanding how those small things that we do in life can have such a big impact on the people around us. And so that's why I try, like, if I go to the grocery store and I see an old lady, I don't hesitate. I just go put groceries in her car, because not only does it make her day easier, but my hope is that she's able to take that and pass it along to someone else who needs it. And if we all cultivate this same kind of energy, and not expecting something in return, but if we all cultivate this energy, like, exponentially the world would get better fast, if we just approached it with less selfishness. So that's kind of the ethos behind what I'm trying to do and how I convey my message. And it was really cool being able to stand up at MIT and talk through these 5 things, and know that at the time, and even for a lot of them afterwards, they didn't know they had this impact on me. But it just goes to show you that it doesn't matter. You don't do these things for what could be, or someone coming to say thank you, or getting some kind of applause. You just do it because we're all human beings. We're all running the same race, and let's try to help each other cross the finish line in the best way possible.
Yep. Ooh. There's a few stories I'm thinking of that embody that same idea. And just one of them really quickly is, I used to live in a condo building, and the lady that parked next to us, she was the old lady on the main floor. But when I would go out and shovel, I would shovel our spot, I would shovel her spot, and I would shovel the neighbor's spot, just because. And then if I couldn't go out and they went out first, the neighbor on the other side of me, they would shovel their spot, our spot, and the old lady's spot. And it got to the point where we're like, who's going to go out first? Who's going to shovel the old lady spot? Because we knew every Thursday she went grocery shopping. And so her spot better be clear as soon as we get up on Thursdays, so that she could go out with no problems.
Would you set your alarm for like 2 a.m. just so that you could be the person out there?
It didn't get that bad, no, but it was a joke between the two of us for sure.
No, and it's good. And I think that's where we started to struggle as a society somewhere along the lines, where we stopped looking at what's best for society in general, and it became what's best for me and my family, and then eventually it just became what's best for me. And unfortunately, that's just not how civilizations work. It is a combined effort, and you're never going to have a situation where everybody's on the same page, but you're trying to make sure that overall you're looking out for what we feel like is best for society in general. And I think that is a message we need to really get back to, is it's for the greater good, not me, but thee.
Yeah. I want to shift gears just a little bit into the ways that you have decided to share your message. You mentioned being on stage at MIT. Did you always see yourself as a speaker, or was that something that you needed to learn or get over in order to do so?
So this is a kind of an in-depth answer, as you should expect from the 20-some minutes we've talked already. I'm not short-winded, but when I was in school, I was the type of person who a teacher could ask, like, what's 2 + 2? And I wouldn't raise my hand, just in the off chance that somehow while I was asleep, it became 5. And I wasn't aware. I didn't get the memo. So I was really, 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 really shy. Unfortunately, you lose a lot of dignity and pride when you become a homeless drug addict. So that was a shifting point. And then also when you have to shower with 54 other dudes in a group shower, you start to realize, like, well, me being afraid to open my mouth and say something is like the least of the concerns of things that I'm going.
Yeah. Just give him a moment. That's fine. It happened to me earlier this
internet
week.
Provider is going to get I'm going to get a free month. I will talk my way into that. Anyway, big picture, I ended up becoming an on-character role for my wrestling company. I played the Vince McMahon, the owner character. So that was my first, like, hey, I'm going out in front of people and talking. Yeah. And after I went through the mission, I knew pretty much immediately this is what I wanted to do. However, as someone who I do believe I have generally a good feel on like how people in society react. And I was like, you haven't done anything that would make other than getting off of drugs. You haven't done anything that people would be like, oh wow. And I'm not making enough money yet because people are so superficial based in everything that goes on in this world, that I was like, well, I have to achieve a certain level of X. And what I started noticing is those goalposts constantly moved as the years went by. It became like, well, I'm doing good now, but I need to be doing even better. And then it was a really weird situation where a couple of months ago, right before we went on vacation, my marketing company, someone with Corey's email address filled out our footer contact form. And so I was like, oh, okay, so maybe this person wants marketing or whatever. And I sent him an email, and he ended up kind of like just talking to me all about speaking. And I was like, well, I've never really raised my hand and said I wanted to do this. But I was also like, sometimes things happen for a reason. And even if you're not expecting them, and even if it's not supposed to, has no reason for occurring. So I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be 65 years old telling myself, oh, I need to be X, Y, Z before I can get out there and talk to people. And I've already given up 10 years of potentially helping people find a better version of themselves. And now it's time to just move forward with this. So I kind of came in, moved along very quickly. Not like there's a learning process or something like that, but like I was like, I want to do MIT because I don't love flying, so it's the closest place I can drive for the upcoming future. And I think I did it like this just because I like to challenge myself to get a little bit uncomfortable, because that's when you really start to find the most change. So yes, long-winded answer of saying I did see myself doing this. It just took quite a ways of winding roads to get me to the point where I'm finally wanting to do it and actively doing it.
But that's the same thing for our listeners too.
Yes.
Whether they're live or on the replay, they're like, I have a message. I don't always know how to articulate that message. But then if they were never a speaker, are they the type who could have an anxiety attack on stage? They want to know how to get over that because their message is so important. Or maybe they're like me, where a teacher told you that you'd never be a writer. And you're like, well, I can't always speak on every stage, but I need to get my message out. How do I get in a book? And how do I get over that? So I like to highlight these moments where it wasn't all easy peasy lines right in front of you, but I want to know what was difficult and how you got over it.
Yeah, I had a friend who actually asked me, he was like, I want to do speaking as well, but I'm afraid like I'll have an anxiety attack on stage. Yeah. And I told him like, okay, and he was like, well, wouldn't that be embarrassing? And I was like, so, okay, maybe if it is, congratulations, you have been the most embarrassed you're ever going to be on a stage. So everything after that is going to be easier for you to do. But also, like, we're all humans. So what are you afraid of? Do you think someone's going to like point and Nelson Muntz, ha ha? Like, I don't think that's going to happen. So if anything, it probably builds more credibility within your audience and within your base to be willing to be vulnerable and go out there. And even at MIT and within myself as well at the event, there were more than one speaker who you could tell were getting teared up. And yes, because a lot of us, most of us, have some kind of a message where, you're talking about things that make you feel uncomfortable. Do you think it's easy to go up and be like, my mom died when I was 8. I'm 41 years old. I think about it every single day of my life. It's not something that you're just past. And so even right now when we're talking, I could feel myself getting full of that, like emotional energy, as I call it.
Yep.
But that just shows people are passionate about what they're doing. If they're willing to get up there and be vulnerable, that means that they're doing it for the right reasons. It's not they're doing it so that they can get money and amass fortune and fame and people will walk down the streets and know them. So I think again, it just goes back to like, yes, it's kind of difficult to work yourself through the process of understanding that you're going to have to go be vulnerable and be honest with people that you've never met before. Sometimes the crowd's going to be in the hundreds, the teens, the thousands, maybe if you're lucky enough, the tens of thousands. But if your message is able to help one person, and it doesn't even have to be my message to help someone transform themselves completely. If it just helps one person get through something they're working through at that time, then it was time well spent. And the mental energy and anxiety I expounded on the lead up to doing it was well worth the result that happened at the end.
Definitely. I actually, I don't have any Kleenex, so I have a roll of toilet paper because I know that these conversations will sometimes remind me of something or a story pops up. And I'm very much the emotional person, easy to cry. So I'm like, I need it next to me. But the first time that I was on stage, I had never told my story before, like to beyond the people who needed to know, like doctors, immediate family. That was it. And then I go and I tell my story, trauma story on a stage to strangers. I am ugly crying, mascara running down my face on this stage. Just started my business and I thought, who's going to hire me? I just did that ugliness and I just had all my dirty laundry kind of aired out to these people. Why would they want to interact with my business now? Which was the complete opposite of the reaction that they gave me. It was all love. It was all hugs. And I think there was only 3 people in the audience who were not the touchy people. And they were like, we're not, but we want to love you. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow. Yeah. And that was the worst of it. It just got better after that.
At the end of the day, we're all human. And again, most people who are coming to see the topic you're talking about are there intentionally. And you have to remember that it's not a situation where like a venue is opening its doors and just like pile in whoever you want, you know, if you're cold, just come in. No, it's people who want to hear the subject that you're talking about. I think we as humans always make things harder on ourselves than it has to be. We've been doing this for generations. We'll continue to do this for generations to come because we just can't seem to snap out of these types of cycles. But yeah, I mean, I think I like being able to say I didn't want to do it, but I did it. And it's also like I talked on a little bit on a reel yesterday. It's about like continuously learning. You have to continuously learn and be willing to do things because the second you stop learning, you start dying, right? Your body isn't using muscles that it used to use before. And I mean, that's how it all starts to unravel. Look at people like Joe Paterno, who were taken out of he was a coach for Penn State for like 85% of his life. And after being forced into resignation because of some of the dirty things that happened underneath him, you know, he was dead within a matter of weeks because his body wasn't functioning in the routine that it was used to. And so I think if, you know, we have to just continuously be wanting to learn, advance ourselves, become a better version of ourselves tomorrow than we are today.
So we have about a minute and a half left, but I want to make sure that we know where to find you and your favorite way to communicate.
Well, you can find me. I have a website. It's the microshift.com. And I believe I'm the Microshift on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and YouTube. I'll be starting a podcast next week to get more valuable, long content out there. And yeah, I'm excited for what the future holds with both speaking, coaching, and the podcast.
Nice. So with the few seconds that we have left, I like to hold space just in case there's anything on your mind or in your heart that you need to share. So what would you love to leave people with?
Just be good people, you know, like help people with no anticipation for getting anything in return. Just leave the world in a better place every day. If you can exit a day and feel like you contributed to helping make this earth a better place, then you're doing life right.
Aw, I love that.
So then I love that too, Nick. And Ohio is near and dear to my heart. All my kids were born in Ohio, so but now we live in Canada. But I love your message, and I'm sorry that you lost your mom. And I just wanted to say that to you because I think that, it's difficult to lose a parent. And I'm sorry that that happened to you, but I'm so grateful to see you and hear your story on the other side. And I love that you want to talk to men because men and women are different. And I know we fight for equality, but we're different. We communicate differently and we think differently and we connect differently. And I think it's so important for, men to be able to talk to men and for young men to have vulnerable, real men. And I also love, people are so much in survival mode. And especially, I said Ohio's near and dear to my heart. I lived there for many years. And that survival mode that we were all in the late 90s and 2000s, it just, it eroded to where everyone was just thinking about like, how do I survive the next day? And you're right. If we could just start, paying for I love to pay for the person behind me at Starbucks or, help, hold doors open, just those random acts of kindness. If we do come together, we can just save the world.
Aw. So I do have to cut us off just to make sure that the conversation isn't cut off for online TV. So I do want to say that this is the official close. Thank you so much, Nick, for being here with us.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And hopefully we could talk again in the future.
Yeah. So we do have a few more minutes that we can play together. But I just needed to make sure that that little section isn't going to be mid-sentence
Sure.
cut off for you. But we can play a bit here. So with the little bit of time that we have, I like to hold this space for reflections within the conversation. Gayle, I'm going to start with you this time since you were right here. What's something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
I already blurted it all out because I wanted it to come out on the on the live stream so people could hear.
Well, we're still live.
I think that you have a really great message, and I'm just grateful to be able to co-host here and hear you and meet you today.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that for sure. My takeaway, is I need better internet. It was very, very disruptive to have to deal. This is, I've always told people, and I know that I'm talking again, but it is what it is. I view my speaking engagements like 65% speaking, 35% stand-up, right? I like to be witty, on topic. I like to laugh because there's so much heaviness in life that it feels good to just have a little bit of lightness pumped into it. But I think my takeaway from all of this is just it is such an important thing right now for all of us to just be willing to get the help, to be someone that people can look to and deliver a message that needs to be heard, even when, people might not want to hear it. Just continue to stand there and say it, because eventually someone will say, you know what, I can't keep doing things the same way I'm doing it. I need to make a change, not just for myself, but for my family, my friends, and everyone around me.
It's true. It's so very true. The takeaway that I took from our conversation was that I am curious if all the interviews today are going to be much the same, but with you and with our last guest, getting connected with Corey and BLU Talks was kind of one of those synchronistic things. You didn't mean to. It just kind of happened. The universe was like, bam, and it was in your face. I love that part. That, and I do really like that your end message of just be good people, with no anticipation of return. If we can keep that energy going, not just during the COVID stuff when we were kind of forced into treating human beings a little nicer because we were all upset and overwhelmed, but to maintain that and to grow that and amplify that's so much what we need. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to keep giving that message. And like I said, I'm very thankful to have a platform like this to be able to start to talk about the things that are near and dear to me. And, I want to continue to do that as far into the future as I can.
Well, thank you again, Nick. Good to see you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.